Every battle is won before it is fought. This is a quote from ancient Chinese military genius Sun Tzu. He teaches us that it is the preparations and decisions made before a battle that determine its outcome. In 1940, Germany's ultra-aggressive, deceptive strategy, backed up by innovative blitzkrieg tactics and a highly organized and motivated military, ensured their victory over the stagnant, tactically obsolete and defensive-minded French and British forces in the Battle of France. Conversely, from the perspective of the loser, every battle is lost before it is fought. Mistakes, poor preparation, and a misreading of the environment that surrounds the battle ensures defeat before a single shot is fired. The moment Japan made the decision to go to war against the United States, the Empire of Japan was doomed. Their defeat was sealed before the first bomb was dropped at Pearl Harbor. The lessons that Sun Tzu teaches in The Art of War also apply in business. We saw a recent example of the principle of predetermined outcome in the hilariously satisfying failure of Mark Zuckerberg's metaverse.
Imagine you put on your glasses or headset and you're instantly in your home space.
It's absolutely awful. It does not launch. Welcome to the dystopian future.
And it has an incredibly inspiring view of whatever you find most beautiful.
Oh God, I hate when it talks.
This place is amazing.
Oh, I'm gonna be sick.
You're going to really feel like you're there with other people.
Thumbs up.
This is so terrifying when you're smiling.
I'm so sorry. What the fuck?
As amusingly pathetic as Zuckerberg's metaverse turned out,
Hey, and welcome. Today, we're going to talk about the metaverse.
nothing the Lizard King himself or the company he rules over, Meta, previously known as Facebook, did after the launch could have saved their digital rendition of Purgatory, but that failure is for a future episode of Anatomy of a Disaster. Now I present to you a series of quotes taken from the box office bomb Bros, and authored not by a military genius or any sort of genius, but by Billy Eichner, the creator of Bros. Now, I want you to pay very close attention to these quotes, watch the clip several times over if you need to, and see if you notice a pattern emerging from this selection of lines.
Butch lesbian or a trans woman of color, cis white gay man, LGBTQ plus history, gay history. Hey parents, thanks for teaching your kids about Santa Claus, a straight man that doesn't exist, and not Martina Navratilova, a lesbian who does. Queer gay couple. Our relationships are different, our sex lives are different. Gay people, the LGBTQ plus, the hot,
Ripped gay person.
Cis white gay man.
same-sex couple, queer love stories, gay love stories, LGBTQ plus, cold and awkward grinder hookup, gay men,
Gay guys, lesbian,
transgender woman,
lesbians, trans men,
Bisexual. LGBTQ. Bisexuals. 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 Bisexual.
lesbian,
Lesbians.
lesbian,
Queer.
heteronormative nonsense, queer gay
Boy Scout.
gay guys, closeted gay frontiersmen, straight actors playing gay trying to win an Oscar, gay actors, closeted gay frontiersmen, gay guys,
Friends gay.
Gay icons. So did Jesus, and he was gay.
If you were able to pick up on the subtle thematic links emerging between those scenes, you are beginning to understand why Bros was a predetermined disaster. Eichner should have set out to make a good movie with gay characters, think Philadelphia or Moonlight. Instead, he made a very gay movie, which also served as a propaganda piece for LGBTQ ideology, in the rom-com mold. The focus of Eichner's movie was not on character, plot, and humor because he had other priorities.
Gay man's anal sex in front of your children.
Oh.
Gay Tom Brady.
Half the kids in Brian's class are not binary.
homosexuality, LGBTQ plus, queer history, trans women of color,
Queer liberation.
I'm gay.
I have never given a plot summary in any of my videos, but I will make an exception for Bros and give a very brief summation of the movie's plot, since no one saw it. The main character is Bobby, a Billy Eichner self-insert. Bobby is sexually promiscuous and doesn't believe in homosexual monogamy because, as he explains,
love is not love. Our relationships are different. Our sex lives are different.
but he meets the man of his dreams in Love Interest, whose name I can't remember and couldn't be bothered looking up. Love interest is also very promiscuous, and as Bobby and love interest grow closer to one another, they are faced with the difficult choice of a life of orgy-filled sexual debauchery and degeneracy, or a meaningful monogamous relationship with one another. Bobby is also the director of an LGBTQ museum, which he is trying to get off the ground, resulting in much hilarity.
You know the blue whale hanging in the Museum of Natural History? What about that, but instead of the blue whale, it's a lesbian?
Oh, no.
Yeah, okay. Well, this happens to be Bisexual Awareness Week, and no one has acknowledged it!
A lesbian wrote America the Beautiful.
God.
Wrote the lyrics on a napkin. If you go to her house in Virginia, they have the napkin!
He also has an LGBTQ podcast in which he talks about whatever the hell he feels like.
And much more importantly, my own problems and whatever I feel like talking about.
Because in this fantasy world that Billy Eichner has created for himself, people actually care what he has to say. The podcast is a good example of how poorly written this movie is. Bobby does one podcast early in the movie.
As of today, the 11th Brick is celebrating 1 million subscribers.
Then the script forgets about it completely and the podcast is never even mentioned again. The most obvious reason for Bro's calamitous failure is that the filmmakers massively overestimated the size of their potential audience and the consumer power of the gay market. As a result, the movie was hugely over-budgeted and over-marketed. Bros had a budget of $22 million and Universal spent $40 million marketing it. So the movie needed to gross at least $126 million to make a profit. In the end, it made $14.8 million. The aforementioned Moonlight and Philadelphia have gay characters and concerns, but they do not confine themselves to that niche, and thus were able to generate broader appeal. Bros is a movie for gay men specifically. Chad and Stacey are not going to show up to the theater to watch this. This meant that Bros has a very small target audience. According to Wikipedia, 3% of men are gay. And yes, I am aware that Wikipedia is far from a definitive source, but on an issue as politicized as sexual demographics, objective research is very hard to come by. And I will just use the Wikipedia page so I don't have to spend 3 hours seeking out and comparing surveys. Going by this metric, that means there is a gay male population of around 5 million in the USA. About 20% would be too young to see or hopefully have any interest in seeing Bros, which leaves a potential audience of around 4 million. 60% of Americans rarely or never go to the movie theater, but we'll be generous and only remove 50% of the potential audience number, which brings it to 2 million. The core audience for Bros was about 2 million gay men. If every single one of them bought a ticket to go see the movie, it would have made $23 million, which would have left Universal with a loss of $39 million. Obviously, the movie isn't going to attract the entire core audience, but with the peripheral audience, the oddly bad-informed couple about to make a terrible mistake,
I want you to fuck me,
and a few Canadians wandering into this cinematic torture session, the movie might sell 2 million tickets. Such a movie should be budgeted at a maximum of $5 million. Not incidentally, even if this had been the case, Bros would still have lost money. The movie sold a pathetic 1,260,000 tickets. It was such a profound failure that it massively underperformed even among its core gay audience. If Bros had been a tiny budget movie marketed only at gay men, it would still have bombed. That is how profound a failure Bros was. Contrary to Billy Eichner's assertion that his squalid shit-heap of a movie would have succeeded if it hadn't been for those meddling straight people, even the gay market largely ignored this pathetic attempt at a rom-com, probably because, all sexual politics aside, people like good movies, and Bros, not being good, was unable to attract the custom of people. But Eichner's mind is so warped by sexual identity politics that he is unable to grasp this basic principle of the movie business. In Eichner's diseased mind, movie gay, if straight people not see movie, straight people not like gay people. Now, it is true that Eichner and presumably Universal thought straight people would show up for Bros. Why they thought any man would want to take a woman to see this
I want you to fuck me,
is beyond me. Imagine a guy took a woman to see this early in their relationship. The woman would sit there thinking, does this guy like this kind of stuff? Is it homophobic to say I'm bored and want to leave? Why am I trapped in an almost empty theater being made to watch gay men fuck? Meanwhile, the guy would be in mental agony because he knows she's thinking all this stuff. I doubt the release to streaming would do much better.
Darling, I have been assured by the reliable mainstream film critics that Bros, the recent Billy Eichner release, is an enjoyable and amusing romp, suitable for all audiences. Let us enjoy it together this evening after we have put our beloved children to bed.
Do you want to go over there? Wait, are you ditching me again to go fuck the baseball cosplayer and his husband?
When I fall in love.
Oh, whoa! Whoa! Ow!
It will be forever.
Honey, I don't think this movie is for us. Maybe we should...
Darling, don't allow your unconscious homophobic bias to determine how you experience this movie. Open yourself up to a different experience of human romance.
Moonlight, which is considered a very successful movie that contains gay stories, had a budget of $4 million, despite the fact that the movie contains more universally appealing story world elements such as drug addiction and coming of age. The filmmakers were aware that this was a niche movie for a small market and budgeted it accordingly. But the creators of Bros decided that the forces of market economics did not apply to their movie because progress or something. It would be remiss of me if I missed the opportunity to point out to viewers that if Bros had been given the same budget as Moonlight with a proportionately lower marketing budget, it would still have bombed. It is not easy to grasp just how colossal a commercial failure Bros was. If you made a movie with the same budget as Bros and from the start tried to ensure that your movie would perform worse commercially than Eichner's Leviathan failure, there is a good chance that you would not succeed in that endeavor. Another reason for the failure of Bros was that it was created in an environment of yes-manship. During filming, Eichner literally surrounded himself with people who agreed with him in everything. He insisted that the entire cast be LGBTQ, including actors for straight roles.
I turned to Nick and said, everyone in the cast should be openly LGBTQ.
There is one role in this movie played by a straight person. Deborah Messing, who starred in a gay show from 20 years ago called Will and Grace, plays herself. I think it's fair to assume that the LGBTQ actors on the set of Bros weren't sporting Trump hats and MAGA t-shirts.
Congrats! You've made it to the Obama administration. But what's that around the corner?
On the set of his production, Eichner created a culture of uniform thought conformity so complete that had Winston Smith found himself there, he would have longed for the freedom of expression of Airstrip 1. In such a culture, there can be no diversity of thought, no objection to any of the dictator's commands. If, for example, one of the assistant directors spoke up during the filming of this scene,
Congrats! You've made it to the Obama administration. But what's that around the corner?
Excuse me, but it seems to me that this is a deliberate conflation of sexual and political identity that will only serve to limit the potential audience by keeping right-leaning homosexuals away from theaters, and that, money aside, this is an exclusionary assertion that Trump supporters have no place in gay culture, an unnecessarily aggressive political statement in what is supposed to be a run-of-the-mill gay rom-com. All that aside, this is a highly contrived gag that was already a cliché several years ago. The gag itself has undergone a process of deconstructive parody online and become known as the "Orange Man Bad" trope, rendering it comically sterile. Simply stated, this isn't funny.
What do you think would have been the reaction of the cast and crew to such an observation? Would that assistant director still have a job 1 hour later? The reality is that no such observation of fact could even be voiced on the set of Bros, by demanding total uniformity of thought, rejecting even the possibility of a diversity of opinion, and populating the production with members of a sexual identitarian West Coast cult. Eichner cordoned off the Bros production from reality within an artificial bubble of totalitarian right-think, in which any doubt expressed toward the movie would be regarded as reactionary heresy against the dominant socio-political order. This is probably why the marketing department felt so comfortable giving the middle finger to over 95% of the potential customer base by including this nominal joke in the trailer.
Oh my god, do you guys remember Straight People?
Yeah, they had a nice run.
Because there was no one there to tell them, no, this is dumb, stop trying to be politically facetious and do your fucking job. Sell the movie. In effect, Eichner had created an artificial Jar Binks effect. This is when a director is so powerful and successful that no one on a production dares question anything he does. Thor: Love and Thunder is a recent example of this. Taika Waititi was a hot director after the critical and commercial success of Thor: Ragnarok, so he was given free rein over the production of Thor: Love and Thunder, and because of the power that his fleeting status as a great director gave him, no one on set questioned or objected to the many excesses of the movie. The Jar Binks effect usually occurs organically. Individuals think themselves not qualified or experienced enough to question the decisions being made by a director who is perceived to be great and has a track record of amazing success, and so they keep their mouths shut when a man wearing a ridiculous, hideous lizard head shows up on set and starts making these noises.
Oh, muy, I love you. Mr. called Jar Binks is demanded by the gods, it is. Terrible things to me if me going back there.
And because the senior creatives aren't speaking up, the juniors on the production decide it's best if they too say nothing about the,
This is nonsense.
potential negative consequences that this creative decision may have on the movie. But in the case of Bros, Eichner created a top-down Jar Binks effect by manufacturing a thought bubble in which sexual identity, political loyalties, and one's view of the movie itself were conflated. Bros was, in Eichner's own words, a historic moment. If you were creatively opposed to Bros in any way, you stood against that historic moment. You stood against progress. You probably weren't even a true believer in the message of the cult. You had internalized homophobia. You might even be one of those people. It's also clear that by hiring artists exclusively from his own social set, Eichner was ensuring a self-perpetuating bullshit loop. Put more simply, he had surrounded himself with ass-kissers. Whatever nonsense people spewed out to praise him would be repeated by others, and any doubts he expressed would be quickly buried under an avalanche of sycophantic acclaim. And there's no doubt that all this fake praise, assertions of how amazing the movie was and how well it would do when it came out, went to Eichner's head. Here are a series of quotes from interviews with him. Karen iPhone, if you would.
This is not some streaming thing which feels disposable, or which is like one of a million Netflix shows. I needed to appreciate that this is a historic moment, and somehow, you're at the center of it. You helped create it.
Here's one from an absolute gem of an article that has aged about as well as a raw chicken breast left to rot in the sun on a hot day.
Billy Eichner ready to make cinematic history. Bros could be first gay rom-com to become box office smash. He's just back from the Toronto International Film Festival, where Bros debuted to great acclaim. The goal was to make the funniest, laugh-out-loud movie as possible. That just happens to be about a gay couple, explains Eichner. The funniest.
Not gonna meet up unless you send ass pic, must-see pic of ass.
Laugh-out-loud movie as possible.
Oh, there she go. She never has any ideas of her own, but she's always holding space.
It is a comedy that is going to go down in history, in a great way.
This is the kind of shite that the people around Billy Eichner were filling his head with, and even if he did believe it himself before the toxic bootlicking started in, the LGBTQ populated Bros production and the puff piece tour he was sent on to promote the movie would have caused his delusions of grandeur to expand and cement in place. With his already large ego massively inflated, Eichner was convinced that Bros would be a smash. Listen to this quote.
Given the talent behind the project and the early buzz, Bros could be the first gay rom-com to become a mainstream box office smash.
The buzz in question was clearly coming from the professional critic class, far too terrified to dare doubt the self-proclaimed historic moment, and from the members of the production itself, who had made a movie in a self-contained totalitarian fantasy world where even the thought that Bros would be anything other than a smash would result in exile. Because Billy Eichner had cut himself off from reality in a nepotism bubble, there was no one there to tell him the most necessary truth of all. Bros is a bad movie. There's too much Billy Eichner in it. The dialogue is mediocre. Love interest is very boring. Pointing it out in the movie isn't meta and clever, it's just an admission of incompetence. But the main character, Bobby, is also very boring. He, being a Billy Eichner self-insert, is a total bore. He has tunnel vision. All he sees, all he knows, all he fucking talks about is the experience of being gay.
People wonder if America is ready for its first gay president. The Lincoln Letters, a gay American love story.
Lincoln was gay.
We weren't allowed to exist. How would we have enough evidence?
Okay,
Gay love stories, and we're letting the heterosexual terrorists win.
Gay.
It's boy problems. It's
Lesbians.
He just came out.
biggest gay TV producer on the planet. He's made all this groundbreaking queer content. Gay president.
Sorry.
LGBTQ.
That's it. Nothing else. And if something does come up in a conversation that isn't gay related,
Mom's been a second grade teacher for almost 40 years now.
he relates it back to the gay experience.
Well, it's actually an LGBTQ history museum. Do you teach your students any gay history? Because I know in a few states they're finally starting to do it. That's actually the best time to teach them, when they're young. You know, that way they develop an appreciation for queer people. We're talking about gay kids here.
Listening to this character harp on endlessly on this one dull as dishwater topic like a broken Sam Smith record is absolutely mind-numbing. Nothing interesting happens to anyone. A main plot point is the plans for the LGBTQ museum, but, and this is what someone close to Eichner should have told him during script revisions, no one gives a shit about your stupid fucking alphabet museum. No one. It's a boring nothing burger with our sauce served with a side of zero. It's about as interesting as a conversation about the merits of competing museum exhibitions.
We need new ideas for what goes in the final wing, and we need them now. Cherry, go.
But instead of the blue whale, it's a lesbian.
Oh no.
Yeah. What about a transgender woman from an indigenous nation?
I understand your main character needs some conflict in his life, something to worry and talk about, but you know what would be better than an LGBTQ museum?
What? Anything.
How about your main character is a member of a happening local gay a cappella group who have some funny arguments about how best to arrange old classics or what lyric changes they should make to old songs.
Give him a lonely heart like Pagliacci, but not as closeted as Liberace.
And whose lead singer is becoming increasingly dependent on drugs, a problem Bobby tries to help him with, which will help to build Bobby's character as a man who, despite being annoyingly flamboyant, is a fundamentally good, caring person. This could lead to funny scenes, like the lead getting the venue of a gig wrong due to his drug problem, which leads to them performing a super gay congratulations on coming out song at a bar mitzvah. Comic hilarity and recriminations ensue. At the end, the group becomes successful enough to head off on tour and start making bank, and Bobby has to choose between going with them and engaging in the sexual excesses of touring and witnessing the lead singer's now inevitable drug spiral, or making the financially hazardous but certainly healthier decision of leaving the group and staying with his paramour. Such a plot would allow for a much more flexible movie with more movement, tension, and interesting character decisions instead of the static, stilted drag that is the constant return to the Alphabet Museum. It would also ensure that lines like this
happens to be Bisexual Awareness Week, and no one has acknowledged it!
Don't appear in the movie. The humor in Bros is hammy, flat, repetitive, and excessively esoteric, even for a niche audience. There's a scene where some woman shows up and everyone starts making a big deal over her. This is all supposed to be very funny, apparently, but I have no idea who this woman is. It turns out she's a character from an old gay show called Will and Grace. The humor also relies far too heavily on Eichner's "don't I just make straight people so uncomfortable with my uber flamboyant gayness" shtick.
All right. You guys gonna see Bros, my new movie, September 30th? I'm one of the bros, so I gotta watch. Tell all your bros to see Bros. All your bros to see Bros. Come on, man. Yeah. Third. A lot of gay sex in it. Whoa, oh, okay.
Which, while admittedly amusing and perhaps suitable for a 5-minute skit, does not suffice to carry the comedy set pieces of a 2-hour rom-com. Eichner also deploys his patented party trick, be the angry but ultimately harmless gay guy who shouts and complains about stuff a lot.
Hey parents, thanks for teaching your kids about Santa Claus, a straight man that doesn't exist, and not Martina Navratilova, a lesbian who does.
Love is love is love. No, it's not. That's bullshit. That is a lie we had to make up to convince you idiots to finally treat us fairly.
Gay actors playing gay, that's not even acting.
Oh, I totally agree. If they ever make a movie about my life, they better hire a straight actor.
The joke being that the stuff he's complaining about is meaningless shite that no one in their right mind could conceivably give the mildest of fucks about. This one-dimensional approach to humor quickly wears down the audience's will to continue watching, if not their will to live. Even an enthusiastic viewer will probably find himself giving up on this movie before it is finished, and I say himself very deliberately. I cannot think of a single reason any woman would ever watch Bros. Of the online YouTube reviews of Bros I saw while researching this debacle, the reviewers commonly reported that they couldn't finish the movie. In a horrifying example of elder abuse, no less brutal than this movie's humor, YouTuber Lauren Chen forced her father to watch it.
I have been love tortured for the 1 hour, you know.
Unsurprisingly, he reported the following.
Honestly, Lauren, I didn't finish the movie.
It took me 6 weeks to watch this movie. I watched the first third, got up to take a piss, and somehow never returned to watch the rest until 6 weeks later. The main character is annoying, uninteresting, and grating. The love interest is boring. The plot is a template cliche. The subplot is a tedious drag. The humor is hammy and repetitive. The Bobby character is a massively overindulgent Billy Eichner self-insert, and the political messaging is absolute fucking poison.
Oh my god, do you guys remember straight people?
Yeah, they had a nice run.
We're talking about gay kids here.
I'm not going to go in depth confronting the disease-ridden latrine that is this movie's political messages and overt political assertions, because that would take an entire separate video. I will just play this clip from the movie and let you make up your own mind about the extent to which you agree with the socio-political messaging of Bros.
Do you teach your students any gay history? Because I know in a few states they're finally starting to do it.
I teach 2nd grade, so no.
Out of curiosity, why not?
Well, I just think they're a little young for that.
I don't think so, though. That's actually the best time to teach them, when they're young. You know, that way they develop an appreciation for queer people before they all start bullying each other or hating themselves if they're gay.
Feels a little young, though.
It's not really that young, though. It's not that young. We're talking about gay kids here. And it's important. One of the things that saved me is that my parents exposed me to gay stories when I was a kid.
And what is it with Hollywood trying to distort and colonize Egypt's history? There is a scene in this movie that asserts that Egypt's history is part of the gay story.
Meet Khnumhotep and Neankanem, the Bert and Ernie of ancient Egypt. Many scholars believe that they are the first recorded same-sex couple in history. Yet to this day, there are historians who refuse to believe that these men were lovers and insist that they were brothers instead.
So not only were ancient Egyptians black,
Native Egyptians, Native Egyptians, Native Egyptians, ancient Egyptians.
They were gay too.
Reflection of myself, reflection of myself, reflection of myself.
No, Mr. Reflection. This is an ancient Egyptian hieroglyph that depicts an extinct cultural practice that you seem to be interpreting from a 21st century Californian perspective. You need to try to understand this image from the contemporary perspective of ancient Egyptian.
Reflection of myself, reflection of myself, reflection of myself.
No, look, human behavioral interaction is not a universal predetermined set of gestures.
I'm black, and I'm gay. I'm black, and I'm gay. Reflection of myself.
All right, setting aside the racial argument for a moment, modern ideas of homoerotic interaction...
Reflection of myself, reflection of myself, reflection of myself.
Yes, Mr. Reflection, that's right. This 5,000-year-old Egyptian hieroglyph is a reflection of you. Just like when you were finally reflected in video game pixels in Madden 95, the first video game to feature black characters.
I had waited all my life to see players of color, to see a reflection of myself in games.
Despite the fact that Mike Tyson's Punch-Out was released in 1987 and the massively popular Street Fighter II was released in 1991. So, well done, Mr. Reflection. Another example of Eichner's excessive indulgence is a song he sings at the end of the movie. It's not a terrible song. It's not Disney live-action remake bad. It's just a very middle-of-the-road, generic, thoroughly forgettable country ballad.
'Cause love is not love, our love is free.
The problem is that it goes on for 3 long minutes in a movie that isn't a musical. If you're going to crowbar in a 3-minute song at the end of a movie, it better be a great song. And, well...
And we can wrestle on the bed. I love when you pin me to the ground.
Enough said. The script for Bros just sucks. The direction is very competent. It's a well-filmed movie with good cinematography and shot composition, but the writing is very amateur. While reading articles released during the promotion for this movie, I was unsurprised to discover this quote from Eichner himself. "I've never written a movie." Bros is a terrible movie. The fact that Eichner genuinely thought this movie was not only good, but great, shows his staggering capacity for self-delusion. It's crazy enough that he believed this little garbage pile would be a smash hit that would change the face of cinema, and that he, Billy Eichner the Great, was an unappreciated genius.
I spent years watching a wave of mediocre straight men passing me by, men with half the talent.
But to sit through this 2-hour-long exercise in tedium and think that you just watched something great requires levels of self-delusion that would make a small child, high out of her mind on poisonous hallucinogens, convinced that she is the Lizard Queen, appear a paragon of sanity. There is a scene in Bros which is essentially one long fourth wall break monologue in which Billy Eichner directly addresses the audience, launches a preemptive strike on his critics, and makes his case for why Bros is so important and why he personally deserves massive success.
And then I did stick to writing, and my gay history books, every single publisher, every single one, told me there wasn't enough of an audience for it. I was always too gay, or I was too niche, or I made people uncomfortable. Even my dad, I remember him saying, "You know, not everyone wants to hear this gay stuff all the time." Enough people tell you things like that, you start to think that maybe they're right. I put my head down, and I just worked really hard, and I just hoped that somehow all these other people were wrong. And they were. And they were.
It's an extremely boring scene, and also exposes Eichner as quite a bad actor with a very limited range. He tries to do pathos and fails miserably, coming off instead as whiny and drab. The scene also contains a prophecy that Bros will be a huge success, and that he, Billy Eichner the Magnificent, will sanctimoniously cackle in the faces of those homophobes who dared to doubt him, no doubt from the comfortable chairs of the late night circuit on his congratulations tour.
All these other people were wrong. And they were. And they were.
The director of Bros, Nicholas Stoller, advised that this scene be removed, probably because he recognized that it was a failed attempt at characterization and a long, boring monologue that came off as a crudely staged diatribe against the movie's potential critics, and a far too blatant self-insert in which Eichner's views on culture are shoved into the mouth of the protagonist. But Eichner, high on the sycophancy that he had surrounded himself with and unable to consider any viewpoint that did not fit into the narrow frame of his tunnel vision worldview, insisted that the scene be kept in the movie. And I am so glad he did, because now I can do this.
All these other people were wrong.
Bros is a gay woke failure.
And they were.
And it turns out, people don't really want to watch that.
And they were.
Yeah, this movie bombed big time, and it's absolutely going to lose money.
All these people were wrong.
You'll be shocked to hear this, but that was a flop.
They were.
Not just a flop, but a full-on fat guy jumping off a diving board belly flop type of flop.
All these other people.
They were right. It turns out the movie
Completely bombed at the box office in the most spectacular, hilarious way possible.
I was always too gay.
Pathetic box office debut of his gay comedy Bros.
All these people were wrong.
Billy Eichner decries homophobia after dismal opening.
They were wrong.
It failed. And it failed so bad that the director of the film is blaming straight people.
These people were wrong.
Fuck Billy Eichner. And fuck Bros.
It's also interesting to note that Eichner asserts in the course of his rant that if he only had more money, he could create something truly great.
Every single publisher, every single one, told me there wasn't enough of an audience for it. I was always too gay, or I was too niche.
This exposes his corrupt Hollywood view that success can be bought. But as Jaden Smith...
You're wrong! I'm not a coward! You're the coward! I'm not a coward!
And Rings of Power...
Hearts even bigger than our feet.
...have demonstrated success can't be bought.
You're wrong!
It must be earned. If you can't make a good movie on a low budget, you can't make a good movie. Darren Aronofsky made The Whale on a budget of $3 million, 1/8 the budget of Bros. Billy Eichner was probably in a state of shock when his garbage movie bombed, after months of buzz of people around him telling him how amazing Bros was and how he, Billy Eichner, was going to change movies forever, to be faced with the reality that Bros not only failed, not only flopped, not only bombed, but absolutely fucking cratered, must have been a massive shock. He initially entered a state of complete denial. He couldn't believe what had happened. Bros wasn't just a movie after all, it was a historic moment. How could it possibly have failed? He had a complete meltdown on Twitter, which was beautiful to watch, and with his head filled to bursting with the shite he had been hearing from his fawning cast and crew for months.
This is a historical film, first of its kind.
He simply could not consider the possibility that his colossal failure and public humiliation had been his fault. No, it was someone else's fault. The blame for the Bros disaster, a movie that Billy Eichner had written, produced, cast, starred in, and marketed, didn't lie with Billy Eichner. It lay with
straight people.
In Eichner's own words. Over the course of his Twitter meltdown, Eichner went on to assert that anyone who didn't watch his tedious little bore of a movie was a homophobic weirdo, and most strangely and pathetically of all, tried to save face by relating the following alleged episode. Last night, I snuck in and sat at the back of a sold-out theatre playing Bros in LA. The audience howled with laughter from start to finish, burst into applause at the end, and some were wiping away tears as they walked out. It was truly magical, really. I am very proud of this movie. Before we make any conclusions about the extent to which Eichner's tweet is true or fantasy, let's do some math. How many people attended a screening of Bros on average on opening weekend? After subtracting the $500,000 Bros made on Thursday previews, it made $4.4 million on its 3-day opening weekend. Divided by 3,350 theaters it opened in, that's $1,313 per theater, or $437 per theater per day opening weekend. A movie 2 hours in length should get around 6 showings a day opening weekend, which comes to $73 per screening. The average cost of a movie ticket was $11.75 in 2022. So during Bros opening weekend, an average screening of the movie was attended by 6 people. Billy Eichner would have us believe that a movie that screened to 6 people, on average nationally, managed to attract 300 people for one of its screenings, the one which he just happened to show up to, no less. Notice that he did not mention which theatre this mythical event took place in. If there is anyone viewing this video who believes Eichner's tale of secreting himself away amid the applause and admiration of a packed theatre, I have a lovely holiday home in Chernobyl to sell you. Speaking more bluntly, Eichner's tweet was bullshit. The most obvious evidence of this is that, contrary to Eichner's claims of an audience howling with laughter, no one in their right mind would find cause to laugh during the boring slog that is Bros.
You're in a throuple. What are you gonna do next? Tell your grandparents?
Hi, Grandma. I have some news. Peter and I are jointly fucking a third person.
It's Paul. He and Peter are jointly fucking someone else.
Oh, how wonderful. It's a throuple. Oh.
But there's lots of gay people in LA. I hear a fanatic high out of Zer's mind on copium typing on Zerself's keyboard, so maybe he's telling the truth. Even if LA has a slightly higher gay population than the rest of the country, it wouldn't matter. Movies that bomb as completely as Bros, which screen to an average of 6 people, and in many cases probably 0 people, don't pack out theatres anywhere in any city. If the interest in Bros was 10 times higher in LA than the national average, which, believe me, it wasn't, the theatre would still not even have been at 1/4 capacity. If Eichner did sneak into a theatre because, you know, he had to keep a low profile to keep from being torn apart by the clambering, starstruck mob of one alcoholic paying for a place to crash for a few hours, the homeless guy who wants a reasonably comfortable place to jack off to a cheap Playboy he pulled out of the trash, and the broke student couple looking for a cheap place to fuck, he would have been greeted with an empty theatre, minus the aforementioned attendees, willing to have Bros playing in the background while they tended to more primal urges. Eichner's Twitter lie was a fantasy spoken out loud. At the end of Bros, Eichner is surrounded by admiration and applause, something which he very clearly, deeply craves. This on-screen admiration was supposed to be reflected.
Reflection of myself. Reflection of myself.
I'm not talking about you, Mr. Reflection.
I'm black. And I'm gay. Reflection of myself.
Yes, there are indeed gay black men in Bros, Mr. Reflection, so yes, you are fully reflected in this movie. As I was saying, the applause that surrounds Eichner at the end of the movie was supposed to be art foreshadowing life. Eichner's cherished fantasy of public adoration and approval is revealed by this dream fulfillment self-insert. This was a movie centered around the person of a celebrated Billy Eichner, which was supposed to result in an enraptured Hollywood elite centered around the person of a celebrated Billy Eichner. That was the fantasy. The reality was an artistically empty movie reflected in physically empty theaters. But in the mind of its creator, his opus is so magnificent that at the end of the movie, even the characters themselves were moved to ovate it, and the genius behind it. And when the credits rolled shortly thereafter, the theatre too would erupt into acclamation, glad to have been witness to this historic moment that changed cinema forever. The
executive producer, co-writer, and star
would be hoisted above the crowd and carried off into history. In reality, this happened.
Police department, buddy, wake up.
Old news. Okay, so now I'm too gay for Aaron, but I'm too straight for you. Will somebody please tell me exactly how gay I'm supposed to be?
Police department.
Lincoln can't even be gay now? Because he wasn't gay, Bobby.
Bros was a vehicle for narcissistic self-aggrandizement that smashed to pieces when it crashed into reality. Bros failed because the producers massively overestimated the consumer potential of the gay movie market, because it failed to gain broad appeal even within the gay market, and almost none outside of it, because it was made in a bubble of creative sterility where everyone always agrees with the main filmmaker in everything, because it's a comedy that's not funny, a romance that's massively over-sexualized, a breezy romp that contains disgusting, reprehensible, and extremely divisive political messaging, and because it was a crap movie. Plain and simple. But none of that really matters. Those causes are peripheral to the main reason for this commercial calamity. Billy Eichner. An inexperienced, fanatical identitarianist with tunnel vision who views the world in a binary of LGBTQ people and straight people. A one-dimensional comedian with a shtick and a party trick. A nepotist whose idea of casting is to invite all of his friends over to the production, irrespective of whether or not they can actually act. A narcissist who uses the main role in the movie as an opportunity for a self-insert, and the movie itself as a platform for political messaging and personal dream fulfillment. A fantasist with delusions of grandeur who blames imaginary enemies for his failures instead of eating his fucking L's with a healthy dose of humble sauce. Bros was doomed to disaster the second Universal greenlit it with Billy Eichner at the helm. That battle was lost before it was fought. Thanks for listening, subscribe, and don't forget the historic moment that is your clicking of the like button.